Hello and welcome. Wow, that sounds really smarmy. Hi, welcome to Honey Badger Radio. My name is Allison and I will be your host on this adventure into the abyss. Today, we are going to cover another person's adventure into the abyss. She apparently infiltrated the Manosphere and she reported back on her findings. And let's see how accurate they are when it comes to us men's issues advocates. I don't recall being approached by this woman. I don't think I would have forgotten her. But, who knows? Who knows who she found to speak with and how genuine their advocacy for men's issues actually is. Now let's do the things. If you would like to send a message at any point throughout the show, the very best way to do so is at feedthebadger.com/justthetip. We get the full benefit of whatever funds you send, and you get the benefit of sending your comment not through YouTube's comment vetting system. So once again, that's feedthebadger.com/justthetip. Also, I know where it goes, even though it may take sometimes a little bit of time to get there. And I sometimes lose track of the super chats. So yes, feedthebadger.com/justthetip, very best way to send us a tip and a message. And if you want to support the show, feedthebadger.com/support for that. This is a request by a member of our Discord. And if you want to join that, it's badgernation.online, where you can send us requests to respond to. Doughboy, he actually often joins me on my streams on Gender Attic, which you can catch him there. And he asked me to respond to this. Now, I have not looked at it yet, so this is completely fresh, completely unscripted, for better or for worse, possibly worse. My unfiltered reaction to this. So let's, do you have it up there, Brian?
Yes,
Is
it's
it
up
viewing?
there.
Okay, good. And just tell me if you can hear the sound or not. Now, I'm not going to start it at the beginning. The individual Doughboy who gave this request actually very graciously gave me time codes, so we will be going to those time codes. I just want to spend a moment. Wow, that's a lot of pink. That is an aggressive amount of pink. Just saying. And I don't think if this individual approached us to talk about men's issues that I would have forgotten that. There's no way in my life I would have forgotten that much amount of pink. All right, so 46. I'm not even against pink, as you might notice from my backdrop. But that is a lot of pink. That's an unrelenting amount of pink. I'm not sure if it's really flattering to her general coloring either. But that might be catty. All right, let's begin.
Like pickup artists, MRAs didn't just sprout up with the internet. You can find them as early as the 1960s, parading down streets with signs and microphones. Some MRAs of this time intentionally aligned themselves with the ongoing second wave of feminism. They joined the feminist organizations and made it their mission to—
That would be Warren Farrell. I wonder if she actually spoke to Warren Farrell. Probably not.
challenge patriarchal masculinity, which is good. An interconnected movement is a movement that succeeds. But the
challenge patriarchal masculinity. Little did these early men's rights activists realize what feminists meant was any kind of value proposition for men in society at all. So any way that men benefit society, recognizing, I mean, it's patently obvious that men benefit society. We wouldn't have it without them, but recognizing that. So when feminists say we're going to get rid of patriarchal masculinity, what they mean is recognizing anything good about men. And also their framework, patriarchal masculinity. There is an unproven assumption at the core of that, which is that in societies where men have authority over women, women are oppressed. Now, it does not necessarily follow that someone having authority over another human being means that the person they have authority over is oppressed. Because oppression isn't just having authority over, it's having authority over and the unjust, cruel, or excessive, or mean-spirited, like a tyrannical exercise of authority. right? And there's actually, you can actually separate the two. You can separate men having authority over women and women being oppressed. And you can actually find for that association. So feminists make that association. In fact, they don't say it's an association. They say that it is a automatic consequence. So in the concept of patriarchal theory, patriarchy, oppression of women, is an automatic consequence of men having authority over them. Or that's an automatic consequence. Well, the truth is that it isn't an automatic consequence. Men having authority does not automatically lead to women being oppressed if you define oppression as cruelty, right? And you can actually look at this and you can devise a way of testing that association. So if men in authority, then women oppressed. You can actually test for that. And the test that I devised, and when I say this, realize that me having to devise a test for that causal statement, and it is a causal statement. Feminists would want to present it as not. It's just a correlation. Men in authority correlates to women oppressed regardless, without exceptions. Well, no, that's not the case. But the reason, like, me going in there and giving you presenting this as something that can be tested, can be proven true or false, feminists needed to do this. It's now 70 years. They still haven't. I guess that's the feminist equivalent of the government saying, "Yeah, we'll eventually pay off that debt." They still haven't bothered to take their assertion about reality and frame it in a way that it could actually be proven true. So, by definition, it's never been proven true, right? And the test is simple. Men in authority, okay, you hold that constant, and then you ask yourself, are women worse off or better off? And in fact, you can actually make this, you don't even need a longitudinal study. Just ask yourself, are women worse off or better off than men when men are in authority? There you go. Are they worse off? Are they better off? But then you have to also look at the situation for men. And then you have to look at all the various factors and contexts. And suddenly, this really simplistic assertion that men in authority equals women oppressed becomes a very complex and nuanced kind of question. And after decades of trying to figure out all the weighting factors, well, how much weight do you put on the draft versus death and childbirth that nobody wants and everyone wants to stop? Like, how much do you weight all of these factors? And once you've figured all that out and given them like an honest, decent, like something that passes the sniff test in terms of weighting the disadvantages for men versus the disadvantages for women, once we've done that and taken many decades to do that, because it's going to take some time for everyone to agree, I think at the end, we might conclude that this is a very difficult thing to determine. So to assert right off the bat that women are oppressed because men are in authority, that it just completely jumped over a whole bunch of work that needed to be done and never was, and possibly can't be done. It might be something that we can't assert. It's just too complex. But no, let's just take the whole of human history and human evolution and reduce it down to a black and white statement that's never been proven. And then let's base everything. Let's base the fundamental relationship of society on that. And let's see what happens. We are in the realm of some seriously experimental science here. Science. Okay. But let's hear what she has to say. I know that was a long digression.
The same issues that were plaguing feminism during these early waves began to splinter the men's movement. Intersectionality was a concept lost on most of the activists. For instance, a lot of Black feminists noted the oddity of Black men campaigning against racism and fighting for their rights as men, while simultaneously expecting Black women to remain inferior to them.
Well, there you have it, folks. This is the beginning of the sorting of the progressive stack, because the end of that is Black men are the white men of men, which makes Black men just the men of men. just like white men are the men of men and gay men are the men of men. And probably trans men, that one's a little confusing. Never mind, let's not touch it. Like everything, the men are always the men of the men. Because they're always men. Because it really is a dividing line between men and women. Period. That's what it comes down to in the end of the day. Okay. And actually, the dividing line isn't just men and women. It's men and women who like men. Also in the non-people zone, the unpeople zone. Women who live with men in the unpeople zone. Okay, so it's basically just single women and everyone else. That's our politics. Very healthy. Very, very, very much future thinking. All right.
Beyond just race, there were men within the movement who believed that feminism was ruining manhood and was oppressing men, instead of aligning themselves with feminists.
Okay, so let's just take a tickle down memory lane to the masculine norms index that was originally coined in the 70s and included a lot of different things: being honorable, telling the truth, providing, protecting, and then progressively, because of feminist conjectureship, was whittled down to a single thing that could passively be seen as positive, and then a whole bunch of negative stuff, right? Playboy. So a man who entertains and gives women pleasure via his penis. That's the one identity, the one positive social identity that feminists left men after whittling it all down to that. And of course, that is an objectifying. It's horrible. It's objectifying. Andrew Tate is a representation of it, and he's horrible and objectifying, of course. So even that is not really very good. But at least it has something to do with recognizing that men can give women sexual pleasure, right? So feminism took masculinity, what we would consider traditional masculinity, and the general respect we gave for traditional masculinity, for being able to defend the nation, protect women and children, and all of that stuff, right? Just recognition, okay? And it whittled it down to fuckboy. But no. No. Feminists don't have it out for men. They just have it out for masculinity. You can be a man. You can have a penis. You just can't take a positive identity from having a penis. You can't feel good about it. As long as you feel like every day that you have a penis, you have to flagellate yourself, then you're good. But feminists aren't about that. aren't about targeting men. It's just that men are the only identity that isn't legitimate, that should probably disappear.
To challenge the patriarchy, these men decided that true
men of quality are not threatened by women for equality.
Liberation would come from separatism. They needed a space away from the feminine, which was threatening to soften America.
Now what do you...
Okay, so women currently, like trans exclusionary radical feminists, don't even want to share women's spaces with trans women. And you have a problem with men having their own space, and you're going to use He-Man, like little boys who still think girls have cooties. Are
You say if we form
your camera's frozen. Your camera's frozen.
Oh, okay. How long has it been frozen? Do you know?
I don't know. I just noticed it. I've been looking up every so often, mostly watching
At least
the chat.
it isn't a stupid still. Oh, looks okay. Just give me a second, guys. I will unfreeze this. I'm not sure why it's doing that. Voidcat is nowhere to be seen. Oops. Nope, wrong one. Okay, here we go. It always seems to be on this one, like, for some reason. It's very odd. Okay. I guess the spirit of Voidcat has
Okay, it's fine now.
What is manifested? No, it's possessed my Osmo. So I apologize, guys. But yeah, welcome back. All right. So I wanted to just briefly do a super chat. Maston Ship, hi again, says, gives us $10. Thank you, Maston Ship. And let's proceed. Let me see if everything's going when I...
He-Man Woman Haters Club.
Decades later, as the digital age took over, this rhetoric remained popular with MRAs. Today's MRAs believe that men are the true victims of systematic oppression. Not even just systematic oppression via the patriarchy. No, they believe that the woke, liberal, leftist, Coca-Cola, DEI feminists have taken all of the power for themselves, leaving men disaffected and alone. The evidence they provide for this is disproportionate military draft.
Okay, I'm sorry. And I love her snide attitude as she's looking at all the patriarchy hurts men too kind of rhetoric. Disproportionate military drafts. It's not disproportionate. It is literally sex, like based on sex. You know, it's not like only 1 out of every 10 drafted persons is a woman. It's 100%, lady. Like disproportionate. And also, do you think that if the cost of society was women being drafted to go to war or do anything, do you think we would ever hear the end of it? Feminists would point to it as example numero uno of women's oppression. If women had to lose their autonomy, they had to lose all of their hopes and dreams about the future. They had to go to a situation where they not only will nobody care about their feelings, no one will care that much if they get their legs blown off, right? And they have to lose all of that. And it's not just the violence, being subject to the violence, being forced to do violence in the name of your country, or being forced to receive violence. It's also the complete loss of any control of your life. Even if you're not on the front lines, you still cannot pursue whatever it is you wanted to pursue about your life, what you decided for yourself. It's at least complete loss of autonomy. You honestly think if that happened to women, that feminists wouldn't have words? And yet it's like it's never included. Well, of course it's never included in the formula because they don't even have a formula, because they have never been challenged in the entire history of this so-called scholarship. They've never actually been held to any kind of standard of scientific rigor in their assertions.
Unfair monetary expectations and the
yes. The single biggest cause of divorce around the world is a man losing his job. If American men earned about half as much more than they do now, or twice as, I think it's either twice or half as much, they would be married. So yes, there are unfair expectations on men to provide. Guess what? There's also unfair expectations on men to protect.
silencing of SA.
So I'm going to go back a little bit so you can hear the full thing of what she
military
said.
Drafts, unfair monetary expectations, and the silencing of SA and DV victims who are men.
And yes, this is provably true. And what's happening is that we have a group of people in the research around sexual assault and domestic violence victims who are using that social ill to prove a point about society. And the point that they're trying to prove about society is that men use rape and beatings to uphold patriarchy. And these people who are trying to use these victims to uphold that point have a very strong incentive, motivated reasoning to hide those victims that do not support their ideology. And I mean, how is she going to, she probably doesn't even address Mary Koss deciding that it's not rape if a woman forces a man to have sex, it's made to penetrate, thus hiding the statistics on sexual abuse of men in plain sight in the Center of Disease Control Statistics publications.
Now, as the scholars say, Let's be so fucking for real. This evidence seems valid, right? It seems justifiable. Men are more likely to be drafted into the military per history. They are.
I sense the sophistry is going to start. And I've pointed this out before many times, that the sophists will say, "You're right. You're 100% right. I concede every single point. You are correct. But now I am going to go on this long sophist journey to explain why it doesn't matter that you're correct. Because we all want to feel something else. I'm going to use sophistry to pantomime how I'm correct, even though you are functionally, logically, consequentially, in every possible way correct on a systemic level. I'm going to use pantomime to make people feel that I am correct, which will make me correct and you wrong, even though you're right. Let's see how she does it.
Expected to be breadwinners. And there are people who don't view men as victims of SA or DV or in general. However, MRAs are providing us half-truths. Their larger conspiracy argues that feminism is to blame for all of these things, whereas I would argue that patriarchy is obviously at fault.
Feminism is to blame for feminist Mary Koss hiding the rate at which men are victims of sexual assault by women. Feminism isn't to blame for that. It's patriarchy. Okay. Patriarchy is to blame for all of the feminist scholarship that asks women who hit men why they hit men and just believes them when they say he deserved it. Like, this is all of the studies that feminists do that show that women are actually, when women hit men, it's actually in self-defense, are based on women who hit men, right? And what they say. And so we're taking the word of abusers, if those abusers are women, that their victims are actually responsible for their violence against them. And that's feminist scholarship. Basically, it is, what did he do to deserve it? And they have enshrined this into scholarship. You know, they always complain when people say, well, when a woman is abused and somebody says, well, what did she do to deserve it? You know, they complain about that. They've literally taken that phrase and they have applied it to male victims, and they've forced it to become like an academic standard. Like, there are academic papers that are literally feminists saying, what did he do to deserve it? Oh, obviously this still fits our paradigm, because these female abusers are telling us that their male victims deserved it, right? That they started it. Okay. So this fits our paradigm. It still fits in there. We can make it fit by simply asking the female abusers their opinion of why they stabbed their husbands or raped them or did whatever else or hit them with a brick while they were sleeping. We'll just ask them. Yeah, that's not going to distort the picture around domestic violence and not going to hide male victims. In fact, it doesn't just hide male victims. This is soft pedaling it. What she said is soft pedaling it, just hiding male victims. Hold my milkshake. Feminism is going to take male victims and make everybody think they were the ones who were abusive. Like, why just hide them when you can take a guy who's, bleeding to death, having been stabbed by his wife, and make him the one that was the abuser all along? Like, that's baby shit. Like, just hiding male victims is baby shit. The real feminist initiative is to take male victims and make everybody think they were the ones who were the abusers. And how does she get away with? Because I don't see, like, when I look at the stats and the stuff, I don't see the typical patriarchy villain, twirling his mustache and saying, "Oh, I'm going to hide all those male victims of domestic assault and sexual assault. I'm going to hide them and nobody will know." No, it's feminists. It's invariably feminists. And not just that. I don't even have to go into actual examples of feminists doing this feminist chicanery in the literature. I don't even have to go into that. I just have to point out, lady, that feminists' framework or perspective on domestic violence and sexual assault is that men use these things to uphold patriarchy. That the average man beats and rapes his wife, his daughter, his mother, his sister, his female friends and coworkers in order to maintain his dominance over them. And this is part of the system. Like, rather, you guys thought it was a crime? No, this is incentivized. This is how things get done in patriarchy. Just like capitalism, money is a part of capitalism. Beating and rapes is a part of patriarchy. I don't even have to go and show you concrete examples of feminists cooking the books in order to prove this. Feminists need to answer for the fact that they asserted it in the first place. And there's no way around it. They did this. They took the human ills, rape and domestic violence, and they said, without any proof, and in the continued absence of proof, that men use these things to uphold patriarchy. This is their conjecture. Okay? It is sick. And it just is there. You can't get around it. This is what they did.
Let's break this down, starting with the war argument.
One party needs
precisely why you
to
shouldn't
die, and the other one can
That's why I don't
vote
think
and
you guys
not
should vote.
die.
That's why you guys shouldn't vote, in my opinion.
Why?
Because you guys don't have any skin in the game. Men have to go into selective service when they don't.
A huge proportion of people who are seriously disaffected are men. Most people in prison are men. Most people who are on the street are men. Most victims of violent crime are men. Most people who commit suicide are men. Most people who die in wars are men. People who do worse in school are men. It's like, where's the dominance here precisely?
In my last
All right, so I'm just going to pause a bit just so that we don't get hit.
video, we discussed how men are taught to perform masculinity.
Wait, are we just skipping that? Are we just okay, all right.
Especially in the West. This includes viewing themselves. What happened to the light? This includes viewing themselves as soldiers from a young age. They're given toy armor.
Okay, so boys just spontaneously view themselves as soldiers. Like they come out the womb and they're like, give me the flak helmet and body armor. Like,
Men to play with in their youth. Their media heroes are often weapon-wielding violators who round up foreign bad guys. Even throughout history, companies have marketed guns to young boys as a way to become real men. On top of this, boys are socialized to believe in their own disposability. They're taught
socialized by whom, dear? All right, because I don't think the single moms, like the legion of single moms that are now raising boys and constitute the only parental influence on those boys, are churning out boys who feel that they're less disposable. Can you like that? Actually, we could just solve that. How do boys act? Do boys who come from single moms engage in less violence? Do they regard themselves as less disposable in terms of violence? Like they have a worth beyond being violent? The stats would indicate no. The stats would indicate that boys raised by single mothers are more likely to be violent. So where are they learning that? Like right there. You can't go any further with that. If boys are being socialized to be violent by single mothers to a greater level than boys who are raised in intact families with fathers, then how can you say that boys are picking this up from socializing with adult men? Which is essentially what she's saying here. She's saying that all of your problems are a result of you having fathers. No, that doesn't bear out statistically. Let's see what else she has to say.
Confusing cocktail of rage, stoicism, and emotional disengagement. They're taught how to not get too close to anyone, almost as a way of preventing them from getting too attached to the world. And then
And all of this is worse with boys raised by single mothers. Okay. So your premise is at heart false. Like immediately we can see that it's false.
When they leave their youth and enter their early teens or early adulthood, they're primed by more nationalistic messages, telling them that good men die for their country. Good men join the army.
Who are the ones who are saying that men need to die in the Ukraine? Because I've been hearing a lot of female voices saying that. I mean, we just look at all of this war propaganda and we say, oh, it's men, right? It's men. And yet we see an example right now. Go on Twitter. Who are the ones screaming the most about men needing to go and die in the Ukraine? It's women. Probably on the other side, it's also women. And yet right in front of our face, we can see that women are warmongering, but it's a just war, right? Well, aren't they all? Like, you don't think back in World War or Vietnam, you didn't have the female rabble rousers, the ones enforcing this idea that men need to die for their country. I know for a fact they were in World War I, feminists handing out white feathers to men that they felt hadn't enlisted. So it's just like she's saying society. Brian says this really succinctly. When they don't want to say, like when they say society, they mean men, but yet it's not men. If it was men, then single mothers would be churning out not more violent boys, but less violent boys.
Good men, true men, don't dodge the draft. Not only do these messages manifest under the patriarchy, which decides how gender should and will be performed.
Okay, so everything's to blame for men. Even though, again, the preliminary science is that women are actually the ones, mothers are actually the ones who determine gender roles. Let's blame men again. Let's just, we'll give women a free pass for the first 18 years. They're almost complete control over the first 18 years of a child's socialization, irrelevant to that child's perception of who is and isn't disposable. Irrelevant. It's at 18, the patriarchal package is beamed into everyone's brain. Are these arguments getting weaker? Like this seems like just really, really weak, like profoundly weak. She's making a whole bunch of assertions. She's basically saying, yeah, they're right, but it's men's fault, right? But it's funny because if you think about it, the assertion is that men in authority equals women oppressed. And she's presenting all of this evidence that men in authority actually leads to worse outcomes for men. Well, my dear, you are literally proving patriarchy theory wrong, conjecture wrong, and you don't even know it. Like, this is the thing. Like, you'll say, oh, but men are the majority of victims of violence, and they'll say something but by other men. It's like, okay, so men prefer to enact violence on other men. Men prefer to sacrifice other men. Men prefer to steal and kill other men and assassinate other men. Men prefer to deliver horrendous consequences on other men. Okay. That relates to your assertion that when men are in authority, which is the ability to make other people sacrifice, engage, deliver consequences, engage in presumably state acceptable violence, your presumption is that these men, which you have just said, would prefer to do all of those things to men rather than women, are in authority going to treat women worse than men. Something's got to give here. God,
but it comes from other men.
Okay, I'm going to waffle here for a second. I don't know. Am I making any sense to anyone? Let me see. Just tell me, because I can't rely upon Brian to tell me if I'm making sense. So just tell me in the chat. And I know it just feels like these arguments have suddenly gotten a lot weaker. I mean, basically what she's saying, and when she says society, like Brian says, she means men, right? And it's just like, well, okay, one, if it was men, then single mothers would be almost universally creating less violent boys, and they're not. Two, if men want to inflict more harsher consequences on other men, how does that stack up with your assertion that men in authority is worse for women rather than men? Which, it doesn't stack up, but, you need to think about that, don't you? Right. And two, no, it's not patriarchy going into domestic violence and sexual assault statistics and cooking them based on an ideological framework. Okay. All right. Here I got it. Making sense, Allison. The sense is making, Allison. Thank you. You are making sense. Okay, great. Great. I'm not floating off into the stratosphere. That's good. Just wanted to touch base before I do that. Okay, let's do some more. I'm not going to ask the special chat. The special chat will just tell me my hat is horrible. Okay.
Men who are in power over you, over other men, and over most of us. It wasn't a feminist who created the selective service. And I can assure you that it wasn't a visionary feminist who believes in war and sends men off to die in.
And yet there seems to be a strong correlation between the women who sent men off to die in Afghanistan for women's rights and feminists, or women who think that we should intervene in the Ukraine and feminists and other stuff like that. It always seems to be. And then also in World War I, there's a strong correlation between women shaming men and feminism. I don't know. I think you guys and your duper's delight grin you got going on, lady, isn't helping. I think you guys have some kind of secret handshake pact with the patriarchy. And the other thing is that it's feminism. I mean, even if it isn't feminism that's directly sending men to war, it's feminism that's hiding the cost, right? Because when feminism asserts that men are privileged, no matter what we do to them, that means we can do whatever we want to them and silence them. Like, what do you have to complain about? You got your legs blown off? Well, Susie has to deal with excessive air conditioning in the office. So there, shut up.
It's a patriarchal person, a patriarchal leader.
She's asserting this like it's an argument. It's patriarchal. It's the patriarchy. There's patriarchy. I've destroyed all your arguments.
Perhaps even a patriarchal country.
Like, okay, I gotta repeat this word as to make it true. And ultimately what she's doing is she's miming the idea that she's smugly right and people like me are an idiot, right? Oh, you don't know it's patriarchy?
Draft goes back to the early history of the United States.
Actually, the draft probably goes back a hell of a lot further. Wait, the United States? I'm pretty sure there were drafts, but okay, whatever. I don't know for sure, so I can't. But it actually goes back to the expectation that a nobleman give military service to his liege, like to the king or whatever that he was pledged to. Right? That's where it goes back to. And in return, in fact, even more than being paid, having say in the political process was prized. So from the very beginning, having say in the political process has been contingent upon protecting the state that allows for a political process to exist in the first place. And not just protecting the state from outside invaders, also protecting the state from inside interlopers upon its laws. And that has always been expected of men. And often, they don't have a choice. You don't get out of it. And in fact, taxes initially were how these noblemen got out of military service. So instead of going to war, they paid, a tithe to the king so he could send mercenaries in their stead, right? That's where the taxes came from. So yeah, okay.
When eagles were calling and tea was getting thrown into the harbor and indigenous people of the land.
Wow, that's a lot of. Okay, so the indigenous were somehow harmed by the American Revolution.
And we're welcoming pilgrims to have a nice sit down.
Yeah, actually what they did, okay, This is a real snide human being. The 1 million views. Oh God. My good fucking Lord. 1 million views of this crap. Ugh. This freaking mind rot. Okay, so actually the natives were hoping to get weapons from the pilgrims in many cases.
On Thanksgiving dinner.
That was genocide. What? Okay, that's a thorny history, but you really should read it. I don't think you have, lady. Like this is does the world just want these women dressed up like fairy princesses to just condescend to them like they're kindergartens for the rest of eternity? Like they're in kindergarten for the rest of eternity? Like is this hell? Is this a vision of hell? Because it was a hell of a lot more read what the Comanche did. It was a hell of a lot more complicated than, well, that was genocide. And incidentally, if it was, probably nobody would be left.
As early as this, men were expected to be a part of colonial militias. White, able-bodied, youngish men. In 1792, 2 different militia acts were passed by Congress. The first made it so that the federal
Okay, what does this relate to your point? This is just, you're saying history. You're spouting history, but so far this history doesn't prove your point of what? That women have nothing to do with teaching their children who is disposable and who isn't? Who is expected to go to war and who isn't?
government could draft from state militias in case of war or threats from indigenous people. I mean, you just had a banquet with them. Why would they be upset with you? Unless the second Militia Act clarified the first, naming free, able-bodied white male citizens between 18 and 45 as required draftees. Now, why do you think these parameters were set? Let's use our
because they had the ability to pay for their equipment. That's usually the case. Let's find out.
thinking caps. It's the 1700s. This is realistically before the major waves of feminism took place. Drafts before this was also dependent.
Also, how does this explain why the draft wasn't changed? Like, you don't need to go back to the 1700s, my dear. You can go to World War II. No draft for women there, and yet women had been voting for 20 years, and men in some cases for about as long.
On male-only soldiers. It's the 1700s. Feminists are not in charge of the government. And it's the 1700s. Feminism as a word did not even exist. Who are the only people with civic rights at this time? Able-bodied white men.
Okay, so
and
what you're saying is that civic rights are connected to the willingness to put your autonomy to the service of the state if it's threatened. You're making my argument. Where does your argument come in?
why is that? Because people of color, immigrants, women, and disabled people were considered undesirable by the country.
By whom? Right? Undesirable. Yeah, that's right. Okay, that's right. All of the women who were married to these men were treated exactly the same as these other people, and it makes total sense to lump them together.
And therefore unworthy of rights.
When you realize that it was their sacrifice that made the rights possible in the first place, right? Okay, like before that, everybody was a subject of the king, and then after they were a free citizen of the United States, the ones that were expected to fight were. Right. So what you're saying is that men paid the cost to become free citizens and establish the republic. And they got the benefits of it. You still haven't explained again. Once again, she's asserting that men in authority means women oppressed. But, as I have said amply, those two things don't. So all she's saying is that men were in authority here. Therefore, women were also oppressed because men had authority over them. Do you think that the situation for a slave was the same as the mistress who owned that slave? Is that what you're asserting? Because if you are full of shit. But you're also asserting that, it's these guys who made the US possible, and oh my God, gosh darn it, they gave themselves those rights that they fought and died to give themselves. Yes. Why is it that there's this assumption that these other groups of people deserve rights? And even black men don't have this assumption, right? They fought in the Civil War. And then after having fought, they asked to have the vote. They said, we defended the state. Can we be considered for the vote? Right? We defended the federal government. Can we be considered for the vote? Just like every other group of men throughout history. That's what they did. Okay? Now you're saying that these men who fought for this state got a say in that state that they fought for. Right? Maybe they should have freed the slaves at that point in time. But at least they created a system that ultimately did, because no one else did. Eastern Asia hasn't done it yet. Africa hasn't done it yet. Maybe I shouldn't stand by that, but let's continue.
All right, and specifically for, let's say...
But actually, you know what? Let's not continue. Let's think about this again. These people, the men who fought in the American Revolution, fought because of unjust, taxation without representation. So essentially being turned into serfs by their colonial masters. So they fought to end that situation, and they ended it. And they created a system that challenged the very concept of being owned. Now, they didn't get to slavery at that point in time. Okay. And part of the reason why it was actually an issue that they spoke about, they didn't get to it at that point. They had simply declared themselves separate from England, right? The system that they created eventually did end slavery, and also ended in England prior, but let's move on. It eventually did end slavery, but they started with themselves. They liberated themselves first. They gave themselves rights first that they had fought for. And we are saying that that is bad. If they hadn't, we wouldn't have gotten any. If they hadn't done that, we wouldn't be here. It's like you're going back in history. And again, why are we conflating things? You still haven't proven that the situation for women, even when their men freed themselves from King George and gave themselves civil rights in a free republic, that the situation of women in that circumstance was worse than the men. Because that's what we're really looking at here. We're not looking at the situation of slaves. We're not looking at the situation of indigenous. You are muddling the waters, and you're doing so to try to improve your argument. Because your argument sucks. Were women worse off than men during the Revolutionary War? How about after? No. Women of that class, of that group of people, group of men, they were not worse off in the Revolutionary War. And they weren't worse off after. So what's your point? The men that actually fought for the rights gave themselves the rights?
Say white women. What was their responsibility and their expectations at the time? The home front. Why is that? Because the patriarchy determines women to be more capable of caregiving and homekeeping than combat. So women weren't drafted. They were expected to work and raise the children at home while the men went.
How does this drivel have a million? The patriarchy made women less capable of the patriarchy just randomly decided to make women less capable of combat. You know, I could be offended at the feminism. I'm just offended at the complete lack of common sense. 1 million people viewed this, and they're all functionally retarded. You really think it's patriarchy? Patriarchy that makes women smaller and have less muscle mass on average. Like if you are a person who says, yeah, maybe trans women shouldn't be able to box with women, how can you possibly say that it's patriarchy that made women not be able to go toe to toe with men in a life and death struggle? It's patriarchy. Oh, it's patriarchy. Oh, also, patriarchy is why women gestate their offspring internally and lactate. It's because of patriarchy. Like this is insane. Like what level of insanity do you have to be at to believe that patriarchy is responsible for the evolution of human biology? Women were in the home because the home was the job they could do while giving birth, raising young children, and breastfeeding them. And for most of human history, it wasn't like the dad was that far away. He was probably in the field tilling or slopping the hogs. Like, what are you even? How do you, lady, you know, you get pregnant, right? You know, men, oh, right. Men do get pregnant, right? Because patriarchy just makes all the distinctions. There's no biology, there's only patriarchy. There's no Diana, there's only Zool. See how much time I gotta take a break from this idiot and that millions of idiots that she represents. I'm gonna make sure I'm not. Yeah, I'm still good. Still good. Oh, good Lord. I feel like I'm getting a toxic dose of stupid. All right, we got a super chow or super chat. Let me check to see if we got any super chows. I got a message from Brian. Super chat. Okay. Yes, I know that. We got a super chat. Okay. By the way, guys, feedthebadger.com/justthetip if you want to send us a message. It's the best way to do so. All right, Albatross gives us $5 and says, almost every femme intersectional topic talks as if women exist separate from society, and that society is a sapient entity that exists only to hurt women. Almost? That's literally what we're hearing. Like she's literally a damsel in distress in a tower, completely separate, being menaced by the dragon, which is society, but is also the person who's supposed to save her. Also the man who's supposed to save her. What is this book? The Norton Shakespeare? Okay, I guess she's just displaying that to look smart. Okay.
And fought. Okay, so white able-bodied men were considered from jump to be the only people capable of defending the country.
Are you fucking kidding me? Maybe the women decided they didn't want to go and get shot at. And they were perfectly happy to just stay at home. The men sorted it out. Right? And then they, you know, whenever it was safe, they would take their spoils at their leisure. Like, why is it never, like, why have feminists never considered that maybe women looked at the situation for men and said, no, that's okay. I'll give the Revolutionary War a skip. We'll figure out what, you know, we'll come back when it's over and you decide whatever's decided has been decided. Oh, good Lord. But of course, I guess that's right in line with the fact that women raise children but impart nothing to them. Just raise, you know, women do nothing, but it's the most important job in the world. Mothers do nothing, but it's the most important job in the world.
due to white supremacy, ableism, and patriarchy. So that rules out feminism, but why did these men have to go to war? Why not a group of presidents, or why not Congress? Why civilian men?
Because they didn't have a president or Congress. They were serfs. They were a colonial possession. They had to send money back to the king, which they had no oversight over. Like, do you understand that? Do you understand being owned? Apparently not.
I don't know. I guess maybe civilian men are deemed more disposable than like a president. Why? Why though? Why? Because they don't have the wealth or the power. Right.
They're not as attractive to women.
Right. And why do you think our government would do that? Why would they sacrifice young men, someone's child, someone's father? All
because they care about men less than every other category of people. Like, why? Here's the problem with her argument. She's saying, "Oh, men in power sacrifice men." They don't have to, though, do they? They could sacrifice women, but they don't.
all in the name of war. Because even though men are considered privileged by the patriarchy, the ones who benefit the most and who have true power over all of us are those at the top. They gain wealth and land from participating in wars, but
Men are privileged by the patriarchy, but they're the first ones sacrificed by the patriarchy. And my brain is not full of fuck. I'm going to acquire an audience of almost 1 million. I'm going to beak off about bullshit I know nothing about with obvious inconsistencies.
are too cowardly to do so themselves, and so they prime young men from birth.
Are you fucking mental? Right? Aristocratic men were the first ones into the fray in the past. It's only been now with this nationalism and all this other stuff that citizen men go. Right? In the First World War, the rate of casualty between, like, the casualty rate between enlisted men, that is men who are privates, corporals, sergeants, and generally from when it was in the British Army, they were from the quote unquote lower classes. Their casualty rate was better than the young aristocratic men who were in charge of them. So the casualty rate of officers in the First World War was worse than the lower class men that they commanded. And in fact, the casualty rate didn't get equal to enlisted men until you were a 1-star general. So you are full of shit. Even the men sending the men to battle are sacrificing. You only get these complete break between the men who or the politicians who send men into battle, and that they aren't the ones also going, which is what we see throughout most of history. The people with the say in the government were also the ones defending and also ones protecting its laws. Now there's this break. Coincidentally, this break occurs after World War I, when women got the vote and became more present in politics. It's almost like women going into politics meant that politicians no longer had to go put their skin in the game, because women didn't put skin in the game, but they could be politicians. So it almost takes away that kind of connection between political clout and military service that she's complaining about now.
To believe that fighting useless wars for a country who does not actually care about you is the only way to be accepted.
Does she think that men should fight in the Ukraine, like American men?
And self-actualized. Exactly. Who sponsored and signed these draft requirements? Men in the government.
Again, Men in the government, men in authority. And what is her main conjecture? Men in authority equals women oppressed. And yet she repeatedly says, what do men in authority do? They sacrifice men first. So how is it that women are oppressed? Right? She's refuting the entire basis of her worldview is mush.
Men with power. Sometimes presidents.
Men with power sacrifice men first. So how are men the ones benefiting from men being in power as a group? Doesn't it seem more like it's women? It's more like men are orchestrating the sacrifice of men, of other men and themselves in order to protect the societies that women ultimately benefit from if they are stable.
Sometimes senators. Feminists? I don't really. Women?
It's like she's like, oh look. Okay, all right. So sometimes people like if you're a cattle farmer, this will come together in the end, I promise. Sometimes you're a cattle farmer, they'll actually put horses in the herd. Actually, no. Sometimes they will put like a neutered bull, or sorry, like a steer, right? Because the steer, even though it's castrated, it still is a bit more aggressive and will protect the females from wild animals here we have a real problem with feral dogs. So the steer will generally protect the herd. Okay. Now, the steer also tends to lead the herd as well as protecting the herd. Okay. She's looking at that the steer is leading the herd and protecting the herd. And she is saying that we live in a steerarchy. Okay. That the steer is in charge and is even in charge of the farmer that enjoys the benefit of the beef. Man, this worked out better in my mind than when it came out of my mouth. I apologize, guys. But it's like men are, they are forcing these sacrifices on other men, and not just in war. The Hoover Dam, there's a man entombed in concrete. The tunnel under the Thames, like something like 5 men died for every foot to build that. So our infrastructure is men enforcing sacrifice on other men because they believe themselves to be disposable, which is not something that they were taught in the 18 years that was controlled by women. It's just something that was delivered to them on their 14th birthday by patriarchy. Oh yeah, you're disposable, Joe. Whatever. But all of our infrastructure also cost in terms of men's lives. So we enforced sacrifice on those men in building all of this stuff, which women most definitely enjoy. But, because men force the sacrifice first on women, patriarchy. Sorry, let me correct myself. Because men enforce sacrifice first on other men, something patriarchy, women oppressed.
Bingo! Be mad at your government, not the random woman on your screen. First point. Second point, MRAs tend to argue that feminism is softening men, while...
Do we do? Isn't that more of a conservative argument? Help me out here, chat. We argue that feminism is softening men. I don't really. Okay. I think I argue that feminism isn't recognizing the good that men do, and men and masculinity offer the world. I don't know if that's softening. In fact, I don't really care. But let's hear it. Wonder if there's going to be anything further that's
contradicting themselves by stating that feminism is at fault for hardening men. War and violence are considered staples of patriarchal manhood. We know this because war and violence are historically marketed and associated with patriarchal manhood. The way society tries to sell gender back to you is how it expects gender to be performed.
How societies... See, and when she says society, she means men. So men enforce sacrifice on other men, women oppressed, women most oppressed. This is what I'm getting.
Therefore, soldiers are the peak of Western masculinity.
Does she think that we live in a world where soldiers are unnecessary? Probably.
How can feminism be at
But I imagine that she also thinks that something needs to be done somewhere which would involve soldiers. I'm not even going to speculate on which particular conflict she thinks men should go in and do something about.
fault for making men soldiers, aka the standard of men, if you claim feminism to be the antithesis and enemy of manhood? Which is it? And
Antithesis and enemy. So basically she said, well, first of all, I don't think there's anybody who does that. So I'm pretty sure the people who think that feminism is softening men may be different than the people who think that feminism is responsible for war. You know, it seems like she's trying to take a bunch of pieces of groups and put them together into something that she can then discredit, but it's entirely the construction of her own mind. So you built a straw man and then you punched it down.
let's just say that your argument isn't that feminism is at fault. Maybe you just think that men have it worse than women, and
Now she's lecturing her straw man. Let us listen into this insanity.
the draft is simply an example. Why is that women's fault? Why are they the target of your frustration?
Because you assert that a society in which men in authority sacrifice men first is harming women, right? But the thing is that, yeah, maybe when feminists are not sending men to war, but that assertion actually hides all of the harms done to men in the society that's sacrificing. How does that work? Okay. We have a society in which men in authority sacrifice men first. Feminists say this society is oppressing women, right? So we need to focus on the situation for women. The situation for women is always worse, and we always need to focus on that. Well, that means we can never challenge the sacrifice. In fact, it's rendered completely invisible. No matter what, women have it worse, right? So we see how bad it is for men. We have to immediately think, oh shit, there's a woman hurting worse somewhere. We got to go find her. You see how that redirects people away from caring about men's suffering? Maybe that's where it comes from, huh? Maybe that's where the disposability of men comes from. The fact we keep redirecting people away from their suffering onto women's suffering. Maybe.
If you truly believe that men face systemic discrimination, why aren't you mad at the system?
Yes, because you are the system, my dear. Look at you. Very much appreciated by YouTube. Very much appreciated by people generally. Me, not so much, huh? You are the system. You are the billion-dollar corporate industry. Like that's you. That's you justifying gigantic trillions of government debt, justifying men going to war and us not caring about it because once again, who do we have to pay attention to? Women. Don't pay attention to the men suffering over there. It's women. Keep your eye on women, right? That's you. You are the handmaiden of the very patriarchy that you say exists. If it did exist in the way that you said it, you are the handmaiden of it.
Women don't even benefit from the draft. Not only
Are you a woman who thinks that men just go to war for entertainment? What do you think? It's a Super Bowl? But you think, okay, so Ukrainian women didn't benefit from the draft. Good Lord. If everybody's right and Putin wanted to take over all of Ukraine, what would have happened to the women?
does it steal away their loved ones, it was created with the goal of excluding women, disabled people, and minorities.
Well, first of all, the draft didn't exclude minorities, at least not in World War II. And also minorities, black men fought in the Civil War. What the?
Because America doesn't think these people deserve rights.
Do you think it's a violation of rights to be drafted? And also minority men are drafted now. Trans women are drafted now. or would be if the selective service is put in place because politicians admit that if a draft is necessary, it's coming, and it's coming for men. So what are you talking? You're going back to the 1700s, to a completely different social system. You're saying that the men who fought and died for their rights didn't have the right to have those rights. And now you're back here saying, well, we don't draft minorities. Yes, we do. Yes, the government did. In World War II, they definitely drafted minorities. What the hell are you? This is just bullshit conflation to try to buttress a point. And apparently women don't benefit from the draft. They don't benefit from having their societies not be invaded.
Women don't benefit from the militarization of America. Women are killed across the world due to war and conflict.
Oh, now all the women are one group. All right, so the women of Afghanistan didn't benefit from the US invading them. I'm pretty sure some of you on your side want to go back and so that women's rights return to Afghanistan. I've heard that you want to reinvade Afghanistan to make sure that women continue to have their rights as we understand them. Okay, all right.
Women of color are gunned down by militant police in their own homes.
Militant police. Oh, you mean, okay, but what about, why women of color, son? Oh, because she's talking about how women are, oh, right. We've jettisoned minorities and we're back on women. Sorry, guys, I had trouble keeping up. These transactional, in these, oh, what the hell is this thing called? Intersectional. This intersectional sophistry. You go from minorities to minority women to women. I'm pretty sure that the next step is women.
Women are killed while serving in the military, and the men who do it have their crimes covered up.
Women are killed while serving in the military. You know, men are killed while serving in the military too, and they have their crimes. That's war. You know, people die in war. That's what war is. 1 million fucking views for this this pathological shit.
Women don't benefit from the military machine or the war machine, just as men don't benefit from it.
Yeah, but only one's being fed into it as cannon fodder. But also, do you honestly think that war is just a game? It's just optional? Like, I've actually thought about this really long and hard. First of all, I think that the preconditions of war evolved long ago, which is that male hominids, probably like other male mammals, would insert themselves between danger and their social group. And they have an instinct to do so. You see that with stallions, wolves, bulls, the steers that I mentioned earlier. I finally got it to work there, guys. It took a while, okay? They will insert themselves between a danger and their social group. That's where the disposability comes from. I don't think it necessarily comes from men or women. It's just sort of an evolved trait that men have. And that can be exploited by people who are in power, who aren't just men, but also the women who have the ears of that men. And, you whisper, hey, I'd like some, I'd like some new jewelry. And suddenly the man is using the men of his tribe to go and invade the conch people. I don't know. You see what I'm saying? It's the preconditions is what cause war. As long as we believe it's okay to use men's lives to solve political conflicts, we're going to have war. Now, if you want to challenge that, I don't think you challenge that by saying that men are ultimately responsible for all the harms done to them. I think that's doing the exact opposite of challenging the idea that men are disposable. I mean, because once you put the blame back on men, like, oh yeah, men are disposable, but they chose it. Well, what can you do, right? I mean, once you put the blame back on men, you totally remove any emotional impetus to change the situation. Because who does it hurt? It hurts the people who choose it. Who cares, right? They're choosing it. They're doing it to themselves. Let's continue to use men's lives to solve political disputes. Men are doing it to themselves, right? And also bring women's rights in Afghanistan. Which I think actually is a modern example of how wars worked in the past. Women in a culture want more resources. What do you have to do? You have to go invade another culture and grab their resources. In this case, in Afghanistan, women in the West want to expand the concept, the colonial, their particular concept of how women should be. So we go and invade in Afghanistan and go kill a bunch of people.
So why are your targets for that injustice women? The same can be said about the
You are saying that the men who die in war are responsible for their own deaths. That's what you're saying, lady, which functionally is excusing the whole kit and caboodle by blaming it back on men, blaming it back on the victim. That's why we victim blame. You're victim blaming. That's why we victim blame, right? So we don't have to care. So we basically say, well, the punishment and the crime is in one. Well, war is bad for men, but they choose it. They choose to consider themselves disposable. So what can you do? Huh? Let's not do anything. Crime, if men consider themselves disposable, if they want to consider war to be entertaining, then the crime and the punishment is in one. All those guys dying in war, they deserved it. Let's continue on doing exactly what we're doing and never challenge it. And then you make that out to be blaming women. It's not blaming women. It's pointing out that when men are in charge, they sacrifice men first, which is what you've said repeatedly, which really, really contradicts the idea that men in authority is worse for women than for other men. And that's the point. If men in authority is not worse for women than it is for men, then how is it oppression? It isn't. It's just a joke.
breadwinner argument and the male victim argument. From a young age, we begin to notice what expectations are assigned to which gender. These expectations are not inherently within us. We are taught them through interactions with other people, the media we consume, and even our education. The rules we internalize about gender get more sophisticated as we grow up. We come to associate men with stoicism, power, and
Yeah, I'm gonna look at the special chat because someone said throughout history wars have had no input by women. Wait, this is not special chat. Okay, so Skeetman Jones, to a large extent across history, wars have been fought with no input from women. False. 100% false. Now, first of all, wars, like you're talking not about the big empires like Rome. A lot of wars were conflicts between tribes, and women definitely had a role in that. They definitely had a role in keeping resentments alive, in continuously repeating the violations of the other tribe to their own tribesmen. So they 100% have had a role in war. We see this now with terrorist groups. Women are the ones who are keeping terrorist groups alive because the men are going out and getting themselves killed. Who is the continuity in terms of financial resources and ideological training of new youth? In fact, recently in one of these UN camps, I think it was a UN camp, there were terrorist women who were raping 13-year-old boys in order to give birth to more terrorists. So you're so full of shit and you don't even know it. Okay, let's continue.
most cases, sexual freedom and sexual obsession. Because of these traits, our culture denies men the right to be uncomfortable with sexual advances and denies them the right to be associated with victimhood. I mean, if you were expected to have a...
Once again, Mary Koss. A man cannot be considered raped when he has a ambivalent relationship to his consent. She has, for a generation now, she has defined how male victims of female sexual assaulters have been seen in the biggest population studies on sexual assault ever. The CDC, I'm pretty sure they're the biggest. Don't give me this crap that's patriarchy. And she is a feminist, an often cited feminist in good standing. And she basically said that if a man is raped by a woman, it just can't be seen as the same as a woman raped by a man because he has ambivalence towards his consent. He consented, but he's ambivalent about it. You know, put a gun to a man's head, force him to have sex, and say, well, he was ambivalent. It was surprise gifted sex. It wasn't rape. That's like, if you ever had a man who did that, we'd never hear the end of it, of how that's rape culture. And yet a feminist did that to male victims of sexual assault. And women like this continue to pump out bullshit to the tune of 1 million viewers. Let's see how Special Chat is doing. Skeetman Joe, I did give you examples. This YouTuber has said this about the rape of men. She's defending feminists. A feminist said this about the rape of men. There are feminists who say these things about the rape of men. She's not just defending her own actions. She's defending feminists. And feminists 100% say this about male victims of rape and domestic violence because they're infesting the statistics on those things in order to prove that men use rape and domestic violence to uphold patriarchy. They are investigating these human ills because they want to use them to prove their ideology. Like, don't miss me with that bullshit. Then don't defend it. Skeetman Jones, if feminism can mean a lot of things, stop defending it. Because maybe feminism means concentration camps. It can mean anything, right? Okay, let's keep going.
Near constant sex life.
God, this
if you're
is
expected to be the only gender that truly enjoys sex, then how can you complain about certain advances? And if you're supposed to be the most powerful person in the room, or you're not supposed to show emotion, then how can you be a victim? Terry Crews was infamously made fun of when he came forward about being sexually assaulted by another man. Because Crews
you don't get to use this example.
is a black man, he's automatically considered hypermasculine. Since power and toughness define patriarchal masculinity, his hypermasculine identity asserts that he is the most powerful,
Okay, so basically what she's doing is she's telling us how this man who is a victim of sexual assault and then subsequently mocked for it, how women are worse affected by this than this man. That's what we're going to hear.
most tough. And it helps a lot that he is extremely built. But people use these traits as an excuse to not believe him. They argued that since he's so buff and so tall and so manly, he can't possibly be a victim. And it wasn't just women, though they did participate, it wasn't just women who came to these conclusions. It was other men.
So now we're going to blame men.
What system applied these traits to manhood? Was it feminism?
Well, no, you're right. Feminism doesn't apply. No, actually, feminism does apply power because men participate in patriarchy. Does feminism actually, it literally is feminism that said this about men. It literally is feminism that says that men are defined as more powerful. Men are defined as more aggressive. Men are defined as more brutal, more violent, right? That you guys literally said, like toxic masculinity, that is defining men. Okay, you are doing that. From the past, men were defined in terms of providing and protecting for women, being honorable, being trustworthy, paying your debts. This is what men were defined as in the past. But you guys rejected that because that was too positive, and you replaced it with violent, aggressive, sexual, and all of this other stuff. You say that patriarchy was what defined men in this way, and yet it was literally feminists, because we can see the process, right? We start in the 70s with the inventory of masculine norms, which includes taking care of your friends, taking care of your family, providing for your wife and children, protecting your wife and children, being honorable, being trustworthy, paying your debts, having integrity. All of these positive things were associated with masculinity in the past. Feminists got in there, got rid of everything positive, and said hypersexuality, abuse, domestic violence, rape, power, aggression, sociopathy, these things are actually masculinity. So yes, feminists did this, and now you are blaming patriarchy. But I'm still waiting to see how women are going to become the biggest victims of this dude being raped and then mocked.
Or was it patriarchy? Let's use another example. Because manhood is associated with sexual freedom and sexual obsession, men are encouraged and expected to
How do you have sexual freedom and sexual obsession?
constantly want sex. They're even expected to.
Yeah, and again, masculine norms. We had all of these positive things associated with masculinity. Being trustworthy, being honorable, protecting and providing, taking care of your family, all of this integrity, paying everything, right? Being stable, right? You had all those positive things in the 70s. Feminism gets in there, removes all of them except fuckboy. And now you're telling me patriarchy is the one that did that. Nope, you guys did.
Lose their virginity at a young age, whereas women are encouraged to maintain.
Do you honestly think that Christian society in the past encouraged men to be hypersexual and lose their virginity prior to marriage? No. Literally, feminists left men one positive identity that could possibly be seen as pro-social if you squint, and that was playboy. That was fuckboy. That's the only way that men can define themselves positively in feminist society, is by being a good lay for women. And then you turn around and say, oh, patriarchy made men think that I was being a hypersexual. No, it was you. Good Lord.
Maintain their virginity. Sometimes men sit down and talk about their first sexual experience. They
How would you know?
recount being very young, maybe 13, 14, in that age range. Sometimes their partner is an older woman, let's say.
Okay, so how are you the victim of this now?
18, 19, early 20s. In this specific case, that young
Very specifically early 20s. I thought some of them had 30s and 40s, but okay.
boy would be a victim of SA. His partner is much older than him and has an entirely different cranial makeup. He cannot consent to the act in the same way that his partner could. But because our culture associates sexual freedom and obsession with manhood, that young boy is told that he can't view himself as a victim because what happened to him is a sign of ideal masculinity. He becomes the man instead of the victim. This is not a symptom of feminism.
Yes, it is. Literally, Mary Koss. Ambivalent consent when it comes to men who are raped and boys. Like, you don't know a freaking clue about your own movement, the thing that you are caping for.
But it is something that is supported again by the patriarchy. It's supported by people like Matt Rife, who dehumanize men, and Fresh and Fit, who peddle the same ideology.
Well, then Fresh and Fit are a bunch of idiots. But that doesn't mean, like, okay, so ultimately we are going to point to a bunch of male idiots who have to deal with the situation. Like, we have a society where men are not honestly represented in the stats in terms of sexual assault. By men who are raped by women are not honestly represented in the stats because of a feminist researcher who basically hid them, right? We have feminist researchers cooking the books about sexual assault because they want to prove that men use rape. Wait a second. Feminist researchers want to prove that men use rape to uphold patriarchy. That is beyond, like, don't you think that's a stereotype about men being hypersexual? Not even hypersexual, raptual. Like, and you are not answering, like, you're defending that. Like, literally feminists. Okay, she's saying, oh, patriarchy says that men are hypersexual. And, you know, that minimizes us recognizing when there are rape victims. Meanwhile, feminists say that men use rape to uphold our society. Don't you think that sort of minimizes men when they're rape victims? Not to mention, it presents a view of men's sexuality that is horrifically awful. Like, you're saying, oh, it's bad that patriarchy presents men as hypersexual. What about feminists presenting men as being willing to take part in a system of systematic rape in order to uphold their benefits? What does that say about men's sexuality, my dear? Good Lord. This is just going to be the pot calling the kettle black all the way through.
If men aren't people, if they aren't allowed to be human, then they can't be victims. They should just toughen up and become better machines.
Oh,
let's
men
consider
are not allowed
the
to be
breadwinner.
human, and yet you want to assert, as feminists, and you really need to know what you're caping for. Feminists want to assert that men use rape to uphold benefits to themselves. Now, forget points. You like airline points, or what is that called? The air points thing. Forgetting getting points on your, rape is where you get your benefits if you're a man, and you don't think that this is dehumanizing men.
This argument doesn't come out of thin air. Everybody and their mama across social media support the idea of men being breadwinners and women being splurged on. This belief is instilled across gender lines, across race, and across class. The expectation stems from a very old gender role that has been assigned to men. Having traditional parents, I was definitely
of course, by men. So men assign to other men that they need to provide for women. But men in authority equals women oppressed. Even though men apparently men in authority make sure men sacrifice men first, and men in authority ensure that women are provided for by the men in their lives. Men in authority, not the reverse, men in authority could have simply said, no, it's women who have to go in the salt mines to provide for their men. No, they decided men need to provide for their women. And yet men in authority equals women oppressed.
Taught that growing up, I should put my livelihood in the hands of a man, a rich man at that. But as Cher said,
you mean like the spoiled girly, who's also quite large, like the entire spoiled girly franchise, the feminine baiting strategies that, if he can't pay for your entire lifestyle, what worth is he? And how did this go from men being expected to be providers to her victimhood?
My mom said to me, sweetheart, one day you should settle down and marry a rich man. And I said, Mom, I am a rich man.
I don't want to depend on one, but not participating in this patriarchal belief has definitely gotten me some side eyes.
See how you did this? Men say being expected to be providers is, what is it? It is a issue. It is something that men have to face. And she's completely turned it around and said expecting to be provided for is the real oppression, real disenfranchisement. If only, in the antebellum South, they had apologists like this, we'd still have slavery.
I assign this reaction primarily to how we are taught gender and how we internalize it. We are taught to associate men with power, money, and dominance. By that effect,
do you even notice men who don't have those things?
we view them as inherent providers.
Yeah, because the thing is that she's saying, okay, again, well, maybe she actually talks about providership as a burden on men, because so far she's just talked about being provided for as a burden on her. Did you see that switch there?
Not because we're misandrous, but because those traits have been assigned to masculinity for most of our existence. Feminism doesn't support this ideology.
It's not her fault, you see. She's the real victim. And also, guys, you are responsible for all of the oppression of her being, expected to be provided for. But she's not responsible. And none of these women are responsible for their expectations that you provide for them. None of these women who have certain financial expectations, they're not responsible. That's patriarchy, which is you, which is men. So, but also, you're also responsible simultaneously with these men in authority telling you and putting all this pressure on you to provide for women. You are also using rape to uphold the system, and women are oppressed by the men being in authority who sacrifice you first and insist you provide for women.
It was assigned by the patriarchal system, the same patriarchal system that made.
So women aren't responsible for expecting their partners to make more? So women are just not responsible for hypergamy because it was assigned by the patriarchal system. It seems like patriarchy is just being used when women don't want to take responsibility for what they are actually doing. Convenient.
Made it impossible for white women to be providers or breadwinners throughout history.
A black woman was the first female millionaire. I just wanted to point that out.
Relegating white men to that position. The same patriarchal system that barred women from owning bank accounts or land. The same patriarchal.
It didn't, though. Like, women did have bank. In fact, there was a woman who owned a bank in like early 20th century. Women had bank accounts. It's just that most people didn't have a bank account. You realize how recent modern finance is.
System that led men to freak out when white women started entering the job force.
Black women didn't have jobs in the past? Are you sure about that? Oh, okay.
Patriarchy believes in women staying home.
You know what's really interesting is that we actually have letters from women in like the 1800s when this change happened. And what I mean by that is women started to leave public work to go to the home in like the 1800s, because women have basically always worked throughout human history. And sometimes the work has been more or less public. But what happened is there was so much prosperity that women could go back into the home, and actually there were even more households being produced because, more goods. And regardless, those women regarded it as liberation from work. Okay. Now, 150 years later, it's slavery because reasons.
Cooking, cleaning, and rearing the children.
All of which over the 20th century went from a 6 day a week, 12 hours a day job to a 3 hour a day job, leaving women with plenty of leisure time, which they subsequently used to complain and never forgive men for. Like, even now, a woman who stays at home works half as much as everybody else. Good Lord. And that, of course, the feminists would say she is the most oppressed. Yet she's working half of everybody. Like, literally, her work week is 24 hours. Everybody else's is more like 50.
It does not believe in women being providers, but someone has to, right? In our capitalistic society. So men, especially those who have been allotted civic rights and personhood in the history of this country,
almost as if they're given those things in order to be able to provide for women, which is enforced by the men in authority,
are expected to pick up that slack. That's not something that feminism designed. In fact, most of the
Yeah, okay, but that's done. It's over. Let it go. I mean, even if I allow for the sake of argument that, oh, and the horrible men's prevented women from providing for themselves and ignore the women who, at the time that this change occurred, were actually very happy for it. If I ignore all that, it's done. It's in the past. Can you guys stop expecting so much in terms of men's income now?
Feminists I read or listen to are anti-capitalist, anti-racist, anti-war, and anti-prisons. Even so,
Oh, that's great. So you're anti-reality? Like you want to live in a utopia. That's good luck.
Fresh and Fit and Jordan Peterson
All the feminists I know think that if we lived in heaven, everything would be fine. Yes, but we don't.
like to use these issues as a gotcha to feminism. Well, if men are so powerful in society, why do we have to go to war? Why do we have to work hard?
Are you fucking kidding me with that voice? And that lipstick color is ill-advised, my friend. Are you fucking kidding me? You are shaming men for having problems. Meanwhile, you're beaking off about how feminists respect men's vulnerabilities. Really? You sound like you're having a lot of respect right here.
Hours to provide for a family. It's like
Okay, I gotta go beat on special chat. What are you guys up to? Skeetman Jones, yeah, we shouldn't try to change the world in any way ever. Why don't we start by changing the expectation that men take responsibility for everything and women take none? How about we start there, Skeetman? Skeetman Jones, you're revealing your bias. Yes, I 100% have a bias. Women need to take responsibility. We need to stop blaming men. There you go. It's right out there. You don't like it? Go watch Pretty in Pink here. Yeah.
they're right there on the precipice of getting it, of realizing the issue, but they take a sudden turn and push all the blame on women and feminism in order.
Yes. Because you lie about the situation. And you say patriarchy paints men as hypersexual. What does feminism paint men when it says that men use rape to uphold patriarchy? How do you think that paints men? You say that patriarchy stigmatizes male victims of sexual assault. What the hell did Mary Koss do when she basically said that men who are raped by women can't be considered raped because they have ambivalent consent? Just because they have ambivalent consent. Just because they thought they said no. So literally a feminist said that men can't say no to sex. Right? You're going to take responsibility for that? How about all of the feminist scholarship into domestic violence done by women that asks the female abusers, why did you do it? And they say, well, he made me. He burnt the toast. And then they say, well, obviously, the feminists say, obviously, men who are abused deserve it. Are you going to take responsibility for that? How about the feminist conjecture about war that basically makes the men who die in war responsible for the war having existed in the first place, thus nullifying anyone's concern over the fact that they're dead? How about that? Or even literally, feminists during World War I handing men who weren't at war feathers to go shame them to go to war. Could you take responsibility for that? Your entire movement helps nothing.
To make their villainization of feminism make sense,
Because you vilify men. You vilify men. And then you hide behind, oh, we're just about equality. Is it equality to frame men as using rape to uphold patriarchy? Is that equality? How does that figure in equality? Or is that demonization? You talk like, again, she says, oh, patriarchy demonizes men as hypersexual. Yeah, well, feminism demonizes men as using rape to uphold their benefits. It's
Raised
really, honestly, it is really fucking frustrating how much play shit like this gets. It's just like everybody wants to be lied to, just like everybody wants to hear that the government will eventually pay its debts. And if it does, that our inflation won't go through the roof.
the manosphere at large have to hide the real roots of their issues.
No, I don't hide them. Oh God, look at that smirk. What a liar. In fact, I think she knows she's lying.
Most personalities in this space
How about this? Why don't you stop what feminists are doing to make these problems worse? Okay? Then we'll look at your boogeyman and see what your boogeyman is responsible for.
claim that the patriarchy does not exist. And they do this because it makes lying to and inciting their audiences all the more easy. If MRAs claim that the patriarchy doesn't exist, they're awarded with an opportunity to
What if we claim it doesn't exist because it's never been proven? Maybe it does exist, but it's never been proven. Like unicorns could exist, never been proven.
place the blame on any ideology they want to. They often choose feminism or wokeness or Jewish people or people.
What? Are you fucking mental? Well, okay, so if we don't agree with your conception that men are subhuman orcs that use rape and domestic violence to uphold society, then we are engaging in ideological thinking and scapegoating feminism and Jews. That escalated rapidly.
Of color or trans people. They choose whoever happens to be the most hated at any given moment, whoever society deems.
It's always men, Lear. It's always men. Men are always the most hated because thanks to you guys and your men use rape and domestic violence to uphold patriarchy.
Deems unnatural or undesirable. The manosphere may be a large and unconnected group packed with
Yet she can still generalize, as she does generalize about men as well.
varying niches and personalities, but the entire
What is this? MGTOW, incels, MRAs, pickup artists? You realize what is this? This is okay. What if these are some very bizarre connections?
culture has the same goal.
Our entire culture has the same goal as the manosphere.
They want to maintain the status quo. They want to maintain systems of discrimination, even the ones that harm average men.
What? So now she's saying that the manosphere wants to maintain oppression of men. Oh God, this is so much fuck. I'm having trouble contemplating it. Let me go back. This is really distressing.
Why do we have to work hard hours to provide for a family? It's like they're
Okay, wait. Actually, I just saw something.
That's not something that feminism designed. In fact, most of the feminists
Okay, so this is your attitude towards men who have problems, right?
anti-war
Okay, so let me just go back here. This is like really popular for some reason. I feel like you are pissing me off with this ad, YouTube.
belief is instilled across gender lines, across race, and across class. The expectation stems from a very old gender role that has been assigned
Okay.
to men. Having hierarchy doesn't exist, they're awarded with an opportunity by the
I want to find that
patriarchal
again.
system.
I want to find this
The same
again.
patriarchal
Sorry,
system
guys.
that made it impossible for white women to be providers or something that is supported again by the patriarchy. It's supported by people like Matt Rife who dehumanize men, and Fresh and Fit who peddle the same ideology. If men aren't people, if they aren't allowed to be human, then they can't be victims. They should just toughen up and become better machines. Let's consider the breadwinner debate. This argument doesn't come out of thin air. Everybody and their mama across social media support the idea of men being breadwinners and women being splurged on. This belief is instilled across gender lines, across race, and across class. The expectation stems from a very old gender role that has been assigned to men. Having traditional parents, I was definitely taught that growing up,
Okay, so
I
I'm going
should
through this again.
put my livelihood in the hands of a man, a rich man at that. But as Cher said,
My mom said to me, you know, sweetheart, one day
I
you
think
should
that
settle
she's
down
actually
and
really
marry a rich
revealing
man.
something
And
here.
I said,
I
Mom,
want
I am
to
a
get
rich man.
to it.
I don't want to depend on one, but not participating in this
I just
patriarchal
want to
belief
get
has
to that
definitely gotten me
moment
some side
that he
eyes.
does
I assign
this.
this reaction primarily to how we are taught gender and how we
I
internalize
apologize,
it. We are
guys,
taught to
I think it's
associate
really
men with
critical.
power, money, and dominance. By
Because
that effect,
he talks
we
a
view them
lot
as
about
inherent
caring
providers,
about
not because we are
men.
misandrous, but because those traits have been assigned to masculinity
But then
for
she
most of our
does
existence.
this
Feminism doesn't support this
thing
ideology. It was assigned by the patriarchal system. The same patriarchal
that
system
is
that made it impossible
really,
for
really
white women
telling.
to be providers or breadwinners throughout history, relegating white men to
Oh,
that position.
God,
The same patriarchal
it's
system
memorable.
that
Like, just
barred women from
constant
owning bank accounts or
fucking
land. The same patriarchal system
bullshit.
that led men to freak out when white women started entering the job force. The patriarchy believes in women staying home, cooking, cleaning, and rearing the children. It does not believe in women being providers, but someone has to, right, in our capitalistic society. So men, especially those who have been allotted civic rights and personhood in the history of this country, are expected to pick up that slack. That's not something that feminism designed. In fact, most of the feminists I read or listen to are anti-capitalist, anti-racist, anti-war, and anti-
Okay, who's going to do the work? Like you said, oh, but somebody's got to do the work to run society, and it's probably going to be men. And in a non-capitalist system, they get nothing for it.
prisons. Even so, Fresh and Fit and Jordan Peterson like to use these issues as a gotcha to feminism. Well, if men are so powerful
Oh, here we go. It's a gotcha to feminism, right? But this is, I think, her real attitude
in
towards it.
society, why do we have to go to war? Why do we have to work hard hours to provide for a
And then she fucking has the audacity to say that these men are not, like, where was I before?
own chaos and shifting standards? No one
That they don't
are
care
dangerous
about the
and
average
misdirected.
man.
Oftentimes, these feelings stem from a sense of entitlement.
Like, how do you possibly
Will never be one of them. They like to make you feel
okay, how do you possibly talk that way about men's concerns with such a condescending attitude and then say something like, oh, these men will never care about normal men? Like, we don't
on
give a crap.
any ideology they want to. They often choose feminism or wokeness or Jewish people or people of color or trans people. They choose whoever happens to be the most hated at any given moment, whoever society deems unnatural or undesirable. The Manosphere may be a large and unconnected group packed with varying niches and personalities, but the entire culture has the same goal. They want to maintain the status quo. They want to
Okay, so what she means by culture is men. Men want to maintain supremacy, and apparently men generally have the same goal as these niches. Why they're niches, I don't know. Like why my channel has like, I don't know, 48,000 subscribers and hers has 777. Who knows? But I'm the mainstream.
maintain systems of discrimination, even the ones that harm average men.
Okay. So essentially, she's saying that we don't advocate for the average man. We advocate for the systems of discrimination. Like we advocate for the system, right? But of course, what she's going to say is that capitalism harms the average man because this is commie shit. But again, like I said, somebody has to do the work. I'm guessing it's going to be the average man. You're just not going to get money for it. Good luck. That means you're probably going to be working at threat of death, I guess. Right. But anyway, because I think that men and people in general should get some incentive for their productivity, they should get something in exchange for being productive. I support the evil status quo because really what we should want is a complete utopia where things just appear and just make our lives better with nobody having to work for them. And that is not a defined, but anyway, me, let's just say me, I don't care about the average man, right? That's what she's saying. She cares about the average man, even though she has mocked every single issue facing average men, mocked, belittled, derided, minimized in favor of protecting feminism, because feminism can't ultimately recognize men's issues, because men's issues disprove its central premise. If men in charge are sacrificing men first, are seeing men in terms of how they treat the women in their lives, whether or not they protect and provide for them, then how can you say that men in charge means women oppressed if men are worse off? So by definition, they can't recognize these issues. They have to minimize them. Just like when they get in domestic violence, they have to minimize male victims in order to assert that men use domestic violence to enforce patriarchy. And then she's saying that someone like me, who points this shit out, cares less for men than she does. Just because I'm like, well, if you're going to make men work, you probably should reward them with something, at least money. Like, I mean, we're no longer doing the family thing, but at least they should get paid. And she's like, no, giving men anything is antithetical to the utopia in which we get things for free. But yeah, I'm the one, this woman who has mocked every men's issue that she's brought up, minimized it, and used it, and only really referred to it in order to defend feminism is not responsible for it, even though feminism is 100% responsible for at least some of it. And now she's saying the people who advocate for men in the manosphere, I'm not saying the pickup artists advocate for men or the incels. I'm pretty sure MGTOWs do. I'm not saying that, but men's rights activists, she's calling us out. People who advocate for recognizing these issues without worrying about how these issues support or don't support feminism. We are the ones who do not care about men. We just want to uphold the unfair systems that apparently both advantage men but disadvantage them, according to her.
The biggest names in the manosphere either want to be accepted by the upper echelon of society, or they are already a part of the upper echelon
Elon Musk is part of the manosphere
of society.
Guys, it's just all men. Like, at this point, the manosphere is just men. If you are a man and you like man things, if you want to, have guys' nights out without women, if you want to have clubs where women aren't present, if you like men things, you don't want women going in and changing all that shit. If you are a man, if you're masculine, you're part of the manosphere. You're also part of the far right. You're also a Nazi.
Society. And I hate to tell you this because it might
I don't think you hate to tell us this at all. I think you relish it.
be the first time you've ever heard it, but you, on the other end of this screen, will never be one of them. They like
Well, I'll never be a man, sure. I'll never be one of them. You will never be one of the elites. So I think most men know that. What they're hoping is that they will find a woman who doesn't care that they're not one of the elites. It doesn't care that they're not a werewolf billionaire ninja surgeon.
to make you feel like
Lawyer.
you could. They like to feed you nostalgia of a time where you may have had more rights than
It's nostalgia. Yeah, men didn't have more rights in the 50s. Okay? Oh God, that snotty, arrogant, like snide face. Men didn't have more rights in the 50s. They still lost their children in divorce. They still had to pay alimony. Oh, good Lord. A time when they had more rights. Well, but that thing is, I'm not selling them a time. I'm literally saying they didn't. There was no time like that. I'm literally saying that men in authority sacrifice men first. Men in authority make sure that see the men they have authority over in terms of how well they protect and provide their women. Like, I'm not saying that. Literally not saying that. And she's saying that people like me are saying that. Okay.
I do. They like to delude you into thinking that you're a part of the in crowd. But
Guys, you're losers, don't you know? Like, this is quite a pitch here.
if the planet went up in flames tomorrow, you would be left behind with the rest of us.
Probably not with the women though, because the women would probably get spaces on the SpaceX lifeboat, I guess. You would be left behind. What the hell? Like, this is a fundamental failure, I think, in understanding men. She thinks she understands men, but she's looking at it through a very crass feminine viewpoint. And it's the same thing that she's seeing these men who are part of the red pilling. Maybe some of them are doing this parasocial thing, but she sees these men, and I think it actually applies more to people like Manifestel and her spoilt girlies, or Shira and the women that whose lives she's currently destroying. But I don't think it applies necessarily as much. I think that men, if they do see these people fresh and fit, I'm not exactly sure what their shtick is, but they look at Andrew Tate, they aspire to be him because literally he's the one identity feminism left to men, which was Playboy. That's in any way positive. But also, I mean, he's got the girls, he's got the stuff. It's just aspirational. I don't think they expect Andrew Tate to keep them a spot in the SpaceX lifeboat. It's fucking weird.
And none of the elites on Elon Musk's private spacecraft will think twice about you or your family.
Because this woman is definitely going to advocate for you to have a space on the lifeboats, guys. Totally.
Now, it sucks. Obviously, it sucks when propaganda and radicalization works.
Yeah. Boy, does it ever.
It hurts marginalized communities the most. In another way, it kind of...
What? Okay, but you just said that if, I don't know what particular group of men you're talking about. Men are not part of marginalized communities. You just said that men are going to be going up in flames with everyone else. How is that not also marginalized? Right. Yeah, men, you have all these issues, including nobody gives a crap about you and you're not getting a space in the lifeboat, but care about marginalized people. And by that, I mean women.
People who are radicalized, because those people either willingly or are coerced into letting go of their humanity. And then that sucks in its own way, because some of the people who join the Manosphere, some of the people are coming forward with feelings they don't know how to make sense of.
Okay, so I don't know how to get the Rumble rants. Brian, do you think you could read that? They don't know how to, but you're telling them how to make sense of them by mocking them, deriding and minimizing their issues. Like, you haven't even presented.
Their methods and their scapegoats for their grievances are dangerous and misdirected. Oftentimes,
so here we are. Men have issues, but the real issues is that they're a problem.
these feelings stem from a sense of entitlement.
Oh, yeah, guys. She's going to advocate for you, and what she's going to say is you got to get rid of your sense of entitlement, because really what's happening is you're losing your patriarchal privilege. You really don't have issues. You're not expected to be a provider by women. That's a role that was put on you by patriarchy. So don't blame women. Don't blame feminism. I'll put on you by a system that it ultimately benefits you. Even when you feel like you're not being benefited by the system, don't complain about it. But I'm here to challenge the system. Just don't complain about it, men. It actually secretly benefits you. So you don't have any right to complain. But I am against the system. But also you complaining about the system. Oh no, what, you can complain about the system because it's patriarchy, which is you. Freaking. This is just basically man bad.
But if we strip everything down to bare bones, the pain they feel is there.
Okay, so now you're not talking to men. Okay, so men's pain is a result of entitlement, which is a result of unfair privilege, as a result of participating in a system in which they rape and beat women in order to uphold their privilege. But, their pain is there. Guys, it's not, it's not about the nail. It is about, your patriarchal entitlement.
Patriarchal masculinity is a confusing, complicated identity, characterized by its own chaos and shifting standards. No one is able to obtain it by design. Many men, cis and trans, middle class and poor,
So let's replace it with nothing. Traditional masculinity is hard to obtain. So let's replace it with toxic masculinity. You're just evil. You just use rape to uphold patriarchy. That's so much better, isn't it? Doesn't it make you feel better? Pink.
fat and skinny, many of them feel alone and inadequate. They're afraid. And these fears stem from a number of oppressive systems that have nothing to do with feminism, nothing really to do with women at all, or Black people, or immigrants. But the Manosphere manipulates young men into believing otherwise. That way, these men have no real way of fixing their problems.
What? Okay, so but the problems that you've just mocked, derided, and minimized, and also essentially want to do so because potentially they could be blamed on feminism, right? Okay, let me go back a bit. I was looking at special chat. Maybe I shouldn't have been.
Some of the people are coming forward with feelings they don't know how to make sense of. Their
Well, you might
methods
help them make
and their
sense of those feelings.
scapegoats for their grievances are dangerous and misdirected. Oftentimes, these feelings stem from a sense of entitlement. But if we strip everything down to bare bones, the pain they feel is there. Patriarchal masculinity is a confusing, complicated identity, characterized by its own chaos and shifting standards. No one is able to obtain it by design. Many men, cis and trans, middle class and poor, fat and skinny, many of them feel alone and inadequate. They're afraid. And these fears stem from a number of oppressive systems that have nothing to do with feminism, nothing really to do with women at all, or Black people, or
It's not to do with trying to please women. None of this. The human race was never motivated by wanting to reproduce itself. Never. Not once. Yeah. Men are not motivated by wanting to protect and provide for women and are laboring under excessive expectations to that effect. Nope. Just patriarchy applying those things to you guys. Because God knows every man wants patriarchal dick and is totally and utterly motivated by other men, not by wanting to appeal to women.
immigrants. But the Manosphere manipulates young men into believing otherwise. That way, these men have no real way of fixing their problems.
Do you have a suggestion for how they should fix their problems, aside from becoming a feminist and letting go of wanting to have a masculine identity? Because this is really where it seems to go, isn't it?
Instead, their problems get worse and their pockets get more shallow as they depend upon these Manosphere grifters. Jordan Peterson even admitted 6 years ago that he understands the importance of his propaganda. He argued that young men are never given affirmation, patience, or even encouragement through their struggles.
The fact that
The importance of his propaganda. Men are not given affirmation, patience, or encouragement. This woman is psycho.
the words that I've been speaking, the YouTube lectures that I've done and put online, for example, have had such a dramatic impact is an indication that young men are starving for this sort of message, because like, why in the world would they have to derive it from a lecture on YouTube?
And who, pray tell, is starving for Jordan Peterson more than incels?
So why is it that young men are starving for encouragement, recognition, patience? Why are they starving emotionally in a society that's set up for their benefit and does so much emotional labor for them? I wonder. But I know we should not blame feminism. No. We shouldn't blame the ideology that presents men as infinitely privileged, thus in need of nothing, for why men's needs are ignored. God damn. Good Lord. All right. You want me to read it, Brian?
Yeah, I sent it to you.
Okay. NovaFan21 gives us $1. Feminists still claim women want a man in touch with his feelings. That translates always to emasculated men. No, they don't want a man in touch with his feelings. They want a man in touch with their feelings. Let's be honest. And also they want to make sure that men never question feminism because it's an ideology that can't be questioned, which is why it's totally and 100% accurate to reality. It's never been questioned. Things that are just believed on faith are always completely accurate to reality. Okay, so I'm going to go to the special chat and see what's up there. Okay, look at, as said before, you need to humble yourself. Oh, God. I don't want to read Nova fans trolling. Karen, take a chill pill. Nope. All hail Emperor Trump. All right, if that's what you want. Those are just rich autists. Okay. Tate looks like a turtle. A little bit. And pray tell who's making the incels can't possibly be liberated women. Huh. I say we blame all the women. Sure, let's do that. Let's see if it works. Let's throw some spaghetti at the wall. Maybe we'll blame the group that's never to blame. See if that works. Okay, so I'm gonna. Did you say that there's something on the vertical chat that I should read? No, I don't see anything. All right. Okay. Well, I want to. There's not much I can say. Like a summation of this. Was it anything but what you would expect? To be honest, like she acknowledges that men have issues, and then she demonstrates why feminists will never actually do anything about them. Because she acknowledges that men had issues, and then remember where we ended. We began with an acknowledgement of men's issues, and then we ended with they are the result of entitlement and the loss of patriarchal privilege. Therefore, they're not real. Right? So she used feminism to go from issues that men face to we don't have to care and we can safely ignore them. But the little dears are in pain, so let's give them a sop. Let's give them a pacifier and a blankie, just because we're nice people. But she basically demonstrated why men's issues are never going to be understood, recognized, or have anything done about them within a feminist framework. Like everybody, gets on my case as a pick me. But way back when I hit Mike, way back when I started this, I just wanted male victims of sexual assault to be recognized. Right? That's it. Like 20 years ago. That's what I came in here for. Male victims of sexual assault to be recognized. That was the primary. I mean, I had other issues as well that I thought that men faced. And I wanted them to be recognized as equally important to female victims of sexual assault. And gradually I found out that actually there's a substantial number of male victims of sexual assault, not just by men, but also by women. And it concerned me that they weren't being recognized to the degree that they existed. And what ended up happening is over the years, I realized that the only way we will ever get male victims of sexual assault recognized as equal to female victims of sexual assault, as equally important, is if feminism is dismantled, because they literally use sexual assault. They use this idea that men use sexual assault to uphold patriarchy. That is part of their ideology. So they will always be there, hiding the number of male victims, hiding male victims entirely, recasting male victims as the actual perpetrators. They'll always be there, muddying the waters, destroying initiatives. And that's the other thing. Feminists, I have video footage of feminists destroying initiatives for men to talk about their issues, including sexual assault. I've had many people throughout my time doing this, men, tell me they tried to start help groups for male victims of sexual assault, and they got shut down by women, by feminists. Why? Because they challenged the narrative. So the only way that we're ever going to get men's issues recognized is if feminism is dismantled, because it's the single biggest excuse for why we can ignore them. And you've just seen her demonstrate. We go from her saying, yeah, men have issues, to it's entitlement. We don't have to care. Let's move on. Ha ha ha. Like, she just demonstrated She just demonstrated why feminism can't exist with the society that actually cares about men. Because it's just too powerful a way to reframe men's issues as either entitlement or their own fault. And not look at them honestly. Okay. All right. So I want to thank you guys for coming. And like, share, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, put a comment below. And if you want to send us a comment that will sort of stay, actually, I think there was a comment that came through this morning I probably should read. It was from, let me scroll down to it. The Great Indoors. The alt-right were always socialists. They just wanted the progressive stack with Caucasian people at the top. Didn't Richard Spencer vote for the Democrats? Okay, that's a completely different topic. Hopefully you don't mind me actually reading it. I don't know if I can really address it here. Probably. I mean, they were sort of a socialist party. Definitely a party of like government and corporate collusion. But anyway, so thank you all for coming. And I guess I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for your kind attention. Bye.
Men's right activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.